Okay, man, are you ready to go?
I'm ready to go. Now, come on, now crank this motherfucker up.
Break it down like this.
Hello, Internet. Gino Grieco here again with another episode of Deep Listens, and it is time to listen to the magic once more. Corset 2021, y'all. It's been a wild few, honestly, a year of Magic. We've had raucous upheavals, and now a new set comes out, and it looks like it might actually be tame-ish for the first time in a while. And to go over all of this, I am joined, as always, by our Magic Master, Kyle.
Hello, Gino. Good to be back.
Welcome back. How has Magic been treating you? How have you been doing?
Honestly, Magic's been obviously it can only be so well, given that every paper Magic the Gathering premiere event has been canceled through 2020. So, it can only be so well with that happening. But overall, things have been pretty good. I've been able to enjoy Magic from the comfort of my home. I started streaming lately. We've been kind of picking up a following pretty quickly, relatively speaking. So it's been kind of good there. So can't really complain. Well,
And your stream, I've caught it a couple of times. It's got a bit of a theme.
Yes.
You're doing something a little out there.
Yeah. So I know, so in the streaming world, anyone could just open up their computer and be like, "Yo, let's just start streaming." So I was thinking, and we gotta do something a little bit unique, something cool that people would actually like. So what I do is I'm a legacy streamer who streams only World Gorger Dragon Legacy, which is this card from, I think it's either Invasion or Judgment. And it's a 6-mana 7/7. Then when it enters the battlefield, it exiles all your permanents. And when it leaves the battlefield, it brings all your permanents back. So the idea is you can if you animate dead it, it'll exile your animate dead, and it'll infinitely flicker all of your permanents, which means you can win with Arkham's Astrolabe or Ice Fang Coddle, which happen to be good cards anyway, so not too bad. So we've been winning a lot. We've been playing that deck a lot to I think the full scale of the highest of highs to the lowest of lows. We've had them all. It's been a lot of fun. So yeah, and people seem to enjoy it. So here I am, stream 4 days a week now. So
yeah, every time I see World Gorger Dragon went live, I'm like, oh man. I believe that a World Gorger Dragon was the first rare I opened in a pack. When I first started playing Magic, I was like, wow, this thing's a 7. It's so cheap. 6 mana flying, and I think it has trample too.
It does have trample. I did lose a match, actually, because my opponent stole my World Gorger Dragon with Garuda, and then he attacked with it. I blocked with Ice Fang and then died.
And trampled over? Awesome.
It trampled over. It's happened.
Yeah,
it's flying and
wow, look at this. It's all in. I just get rid of all my stuff and just say, Dragon, you're enough.
Oh yeah, no, it leads. I think it's one of the dumbest, not dumbest, stupid, to play, but it leads to some of the dumbest games you've ever played in Magic. My brain sometimes, some of the scenarios that I've been in playing this deck, especially with Legacy, just my brain can't really handle it. One time I was up against Mono White Prison, or it was Mono White Bomberman, and they had their combo assembled, but they didn't have enough time to execute their full loop because Moto sucks. And I'm like, you know what? Everyone times me out in this program, so I'm gonna take this one here. And then he draws 10 cards. And then he plays, and he's like, all right, I'll just play Garuda. I'm like, okay, guys, this is our out. He mills over our World Gorge Dragon, and then we draw Animate Deck. Because at this point, he had a Chalice on 0, a Chalice on 1, and a Chalice on 3 in play, so I couldn't cast most of my spells. And then he mills over nothing from his deck, and only my Dragon from my deck, and exiles his entire board, and then I win.
Awesome.
Oh, man. And there's plenty more.
If people would like to watch you trying to play World Gorger Dragon in Legacy, what is your Twitch?
Yes, so the Twitch is twitch.tv/WorldGorger115. And then from there, we got a Discord server, we got a YouTube channel. We have a really good write-up, which even if you're not at all interested in seeing the stream or anything like that, if you just want to check out World Gorger Dragon and Legacy, highly recommend checking out the write-up. It talks about everything you could have ever thought about of Dragon and more. So definitely recommend that.
Yeah, as someone who does not like Legacy even a little bit, It is always fun to watch every time I tune in and see just people very flabbergasted in the first game. They always seem to not know what's up, and then you're just like, oh, they don't know. They don't know what's about to happen to them.
It's actually funny, though, because the amount of success the stream has had, World Gorge of Dragons now a known quantity, which is pretty funny. People see it coming now. But yeah, it used to be like that for the longest time, where like people think you're on Sultai Snow, and then you just play a World Gorge Dragon, they're like, oh. Guess I'm dead.
Guess you're going to draw your whole deck and then kill me. Oh, dang.
Yeah, well, dang.
So without further ado, actually, before we get into the cards, just a reminder, you can get in touch with the show at DeepListensPod on Twitter, deeplistens.libsyn.com. We've got our comment sections and deeplistenspodcast at gmail.com. You can also support the show on patreon.com/deeplistens. If you have any Magic questions, get them in there. We've got opinions, and I think both of us are at least good enough at this game that maybe we can answer some questions. I don't know. But to start, we'll start with Core Set 2021, because there's actually two sets that are coming out in like the next 2 weeks. There's Core Set 2021 and Jumpstart, which is a completely different way to play Magic that I don't know if I'm going to touch at all, but we should at least mention what the heck it is. But to start off, let's look at Core Set 2021. It is... Oh, actually, we should probably talk about the bannings first, because we called some shots.
Oh, yeah, we actually did, didn't we, huh? We also missed some shots, but we can talk about that as well. So, sort of.
Last podcast, we started towards the end of the podcast just saying, okay, what are the list of the cards that are most likely to get banned? Because we thought that there were at least 10 or more cards that could all get banned. And I think we said definitely Urian and Luris are the two companions that seemed well out of line, and that's proven to be true.
Yep.
Luris was banned in Vintage, one of the only cards to ever be banned in Vintage that doesn't involve Anti.
Yeah, they had to. Like, that was the only way. Well, I guess with the nerf, it probably would have been fine. But, like, before the nerf.
Yes. So it got banned, and Companion as a mechanic was so powerful that they went ahead and changed the mechanic entirely. They added a 3-mana tax to add the card to your hand now, which I think has basically made all of the aggro companions terrible as companions, and all of the mid-range companions are only minor nerfs. Like, Karuga and Yorion are still fine, Luris is still fine, but Obosh is now terrible.
Yeah, I agree, but I think, like, this was a big, even for, yes, it definitely affects the aggro companions more than the mid-range companions, but this was a big nerf for companions. Like, I've seen barely any companion, like, I don't know, I play mostly Legacy now, so, like, used to see companions every single match, and now you just don't see them at all, because it's just, like, the tempo loss of using 3 Mage to put the card in your hand is pretty big. It's pretty big. It's on top of the deck building restrictions, like, okay, this is the point where these cards are actually okay now. A lot of times I see companions when people are just playing decks and it's like, hey, look, I satisfied this requirement without working for it. Might as well put a companion in my deck. So,
yeah, I think that in Legacy specifically, because that format is so fast, and the only way you can really afford 8 mana or 6, like the cheapest companion's 6 mana now.
Yeah,
The only way you can afford that is if you're playing something that has an infinite mana engine, or you somehow manage to drag the game out, which is hard to do in Legacy.
It is. I guess in Standards, Urian's still like pretty very present in Standard. That's still a thing.
I think in Standard, Pioneer, and Modern, the argument for playing companions is still pretty compelling. Legacy, though, if they still had the companions, like they banned Luris and
they straight up killed them.
What's the red-white one?
Zerda, Tijon. Or whatever. Yeah, Zerda, the Dawnwaker.
So they banned the 2 companions in Legacy that straight just ended the game as soon as they resolved.
Yeah.
So because of that, now all of the companions that are left over are just Value Town companions, and that's not what Legacy is generally about. So since you banned the ones that are just infinite combos, now Legacy doesn't have a compelling reason to play them. But I think that in Modern and Pioneer and Standard, because those formats are a little slower, because value generation can actually result in wins somewhat in those formats, I think there's a really compelling argument to still be playing Yorion. I think that there's a compelling argument to still shoehorn in these companions. Though before, there was literally no reason to not play them. Like, you you were doing something wrong if you didn't play a companion in most circumstances. Now there's at least an argument. Now you can play other decks.
I'm totally with you there. I'm totally with you. At least I'm happy with it. I think the nerf was good. I think it was, honestly, I think it might have even been perfect. Where, like, people still play companions. They still can. But now it actually comes at a real cost. So, great. Good job, Wizards. Like, or I guess bad job for making this a thing in the first place, but good job for fixing it.
Good job for mostly fixing it. And
medium job.
And I think that similar to some of the other mistakes of Magic's past, these cards will always have to be considered every time you're building a deck in Modern, Pioneer, and Legacy. Like, you'll need to think about these cards. Like, there's a handful of card pools that every time I'm building a deck, I just go, okay, which of these broken cards do I want to try and shoehorn in because they're just too powerful? Like, I always look up Phyrexian mana cards. Every time something to cheat mana comes out, like, look up the Delve cards, look up the Suspend 0 cards that are just broken spells that you can cheat into play. And now the companions are in that list. Like, whenever you're building a deck, just do a search on them, see if you can fit them in, and if you can, it's still good. If you're not contorting your deck, they're still very good. If
you don't have to contort your deck at all, it's still completely free. Like, you are paying, if your deck already satisfies the companion requirement, there's no other cost that you have to pay. So there's still, that's what I don't like. That's the one thing I don't like about the nerf. That it's still, if you're doing the thing, it's legit free. Like, cycling still runs Luris because, like, yeah, it's worse, but you weren't going to play 3 drops anyway, so whatever.
Yeah, it's always better than your 15th sideboard slot. It's not a choice.
Not even close. Not even close. Yeah.
So I think we nailed some of them. Now, the one thing I feel bad about is that Song of Creation and Titan's Nest, both of those cards we thought were pretty solid chances at seeing bans. And I don't want to give up on those cards yet. Because up until now, they have been competing directly with 2 different 4 mana doublers or triplers in some cases. And Fires of Invention was another card that we talked about extensively when Throne of Eldraine came out. And we were like, look, it triples your mana. Like, why would you not play this card? It asks almost nothing of you. But then Oko existed, and we both agreed, like, Oko is going to get banned. It's way too strong. And until Oko got banned, food was just too strong. You couldn't make the argument to try to set up Fires of Invention when there was this deck that could just turn all of your things you were cheating into play into 3/3 Elks.
Yeah.
Like, there was no good reason to do it. There was this other deck that was too strong.
Yeah, it was honestly remarkable. Like, Oko was already a ridiculously busted card, like, with no help whatsoever. And the fact that they also just fit it into a really powerful archetype with really good enablers is just, like, so beyond. Like, really?
Exactly.
Like, Gilded Goose, really? Do we have to do that? Like,
exactly.
But that's I mean, people have talked about it already, so, you know.
Yeah, but for a while, it suppressed Fires of Invention. It made Fires of Invention look like an acceptable card. And it was never an acceptable card. It was just that they printed so many unacceptable cards, one after another, that card took the banning of the other even more broken shit. Like, you had to ban Field of the Dead and you had to ban Oko before people were like, okay, I guess we can go back to Wilderness Wreck and go back to Fires of Invention because those cards aren't bad. They're still busted.
Yeah, quick aside, isn't it remarkable that if bans hadn't happened, Field of the Dead would still be legal in this standard format?
Oh, yeah.
I just think that's remarkable. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, no more comment than that, but...
I mean, it's incredible. Like, the string of bans, the string of just complete gigantic mistakes that were very clearly gigantic mistakes the moment they were printed. It's been a real year, folks.
Yeah.
But like, I think that getting back to Song of Creation, that's a card that is a combo unto itself. I have milled myself to 0 on turn 6 with that card repeatedly, very consistently. The problem is that the decks in the format up until now could kill you on turn 4 or functionally kill you on turn 4 by stealing your lands or by tripling their mana and doming you with an expansion explosion. Like, those 2 cards, Fires of Invention and Wilderness Reclamation, make it so that all these other engines just you can't play them. You've got this card that costs the same amount of mana that asks nothing of you that can win the game almost by itself. So why would you do this other 4 mana thing that's slightly more restrictive, that takes a little bit more work to kill your opponent in a roughly similar time frame? There's no reason to. They're the same colors even. Like Temur Rec is the same thing as Song of Creation. The restrictions on mana are the same. But
absolutely.
But Temur Rec almost always comes down on turn 4, whereas Song sometimes it comes down on turn 5 because getting Temur mana instead of just one green pip is harder. So as long as those cards exist in the format, I think that Song's going to have a hard time breaking through. But as soon as those cards are gone from the format, which could come via ban or it could come via rotation, I'm still staring at that card because it is too strong to not see play at some point, I think. I mean, it's been messed up literally every time I've untapped with it. So I don't...
Yeah. No, I think you have a really good point. Also, I think it goes to say another piece of the puzzle there why it doesn't see play is that because these like Wilderness Reclamation, Fire's Invention, or I guess like because the green cards are so good, and to a lesser extent the red cards, but mostly the green cards, it means that Aether Gust is played legit everywhere. Like main deck 4 of is common for Aether Gust in many decks. Like I know my friend in the last Pro Tour ran 4 copies of Aether Gust in his Bant deck in the main. So which does not great for cards like Song of Creation. So
and for main deck Mystical Disputes is also fairly
common. Yes, no, Mystical Disputes is another big one. Actually I should have led on that one. Same point, but much better.
People are playing main deck 8 hate cards for green for just green. So
green
it makes these decks extra targeted right now. And so I think that ultimately, I think we were doing a decent job of the read of the power. It's just that the amount of power concentrated in companions and apparently stealing all of your opponent's permanents was so high. And I think Winona was on the list of cards that could potentially see bans, but it turns out that instead of banning the enablers, they just banned the payoff on this one.
Yeah, I get it. It gets rotation. Agent wasn't going to be around for much longer, so just get it out.
Yeah, and it's a miserable card. I've never played a game where Agent was cast where I felt like I had a good time.
Yeah.
Because as the person who never played the Agent, it's pretty miserable when they steal your land or your best permanent and then they blink the Agent. It's even worse when it happens on turn 4.
Yeah, honestly, even as the person playing Agent, it's not that fun. It's like, oh, my opponent has no lands. Well, that was fun.
Okay, play. Hooray.
Wow, we won.
Like
I actually enjoy playing Magic. Like, I like winning too, but like playing games. This is why I'm here to play Magic. So if I just like go turn 4 Fires into or turn 5 like Luca into Urion and to take all your stuff, that's not that fun. Like, it's dumb.
Yeah.
And it had to go. It had to go. One piece of it had to go, especially because they printed another polymorph in this set. Got to get the Agent out of here.
And especially because Agent was the end game of all of these degenerate strategies. Every single one of them. It was Winona, it was Luca, it was the ramp strategies. That was the Agent. That was the period at the end of the sentence that was ramp. So basically it was all different decks trying to cheat out the same card. And if you remove that card, now at least the games go slightly differently. Though instead of killing people with an Agent, now people are just expansion explosioning you for 20. So
yay!
It's still not a great format, but hopefully this new set, Core Set 2021, will shake things up at least.
Oh, I don't think it will.
I don't think it will either. But
I don't think it
let's
will
hope.
At all.
So let's look at 2021. I think that this set has fewer impactful cards than the last set, or at least fewer gigantic broken cards, but the average power level is still quite high.
Yeah, no, I think this is so good. Like, I think they've hit the sweet spot with it. Like, I don't think it's going to fix the format. I think the format's still be miserable. But, like, taking this set in a vacuum, I think they've kind of hit it. Like, this is, like, the level where, like, the cards are cool and the cards are pushed. But there's no card where I'm like, okay, this is too good. We got to ban this. It's just, like, the card, you have to work for it. You got to work for it a little bit. Or it's not always good.
I think that there's a lot of cards that would have been had they not already nerfed Companion. There's a handful of cards where I'm like, they couldn't have printed that if they didn't do bans. But they did the bans, so hopefully now it's okay. So why don't we start out looking at white? What do we think is the best card in white?
Yeah, there's a few cards that like, but the one I think that like the one that like easily comes to mind here, like it's like if we're talking just like general best white card in the set, like not kind of relegating to any one specific format or anything like that, it's like pretty easily Containment Priest. Like again, as a Legacy player, Companion Priest is ridiculously good in Legacy in many different scenarios. And now the fact we have access to this in Standard, Pioneer, Modern, I guess that's all of them. But the fact that we have access to it in all the formats now, this card's going to see a lot of play and a lot of sideboards, and it's going to be really good. And I'm very happy it's here. It's a great 8 card, and I don't think it's oppressively good. I think it's just good at what it does, and I'm really happy to see it. It's very good. So.
Yes, I think it solves. If it had been here 3 sets ago, maybe we don't end up with the problem we have right now.
Oh yeah, you could stop Luca with Containment Priest, which is nice, but here we are. Well, another thing, I think it still would have been bad because the problem is like
stops Urian.
Yeah, it does. It does stop. Well, it stops the creatures with Urian. If they bounce, if they flicker their omens or something like that, it does not stop it. But
that's true.
You know, but yeah, it does stop Urian. It stops the agents if those are still around.
Yes, because no one's fairly cast an agent in quite some time.
No, they have not. It was thinking ramp decks at one point, but not anymore.
Yes. So for me, I think the strongest card in white is probably Basri's Lieutenant is the one that I'm going for. So it's 3 and a white for a 3/4 human knight with vigilance, protection from multicolored. When Basri's Lieutenant enters the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. Whenever Basri's Lieutenant or another creature you control dies, if it had a +1/+1 counter on it, create a 2/2 white knight creature token with vigilance. So I just think it's a rate monster. It's basically 4 mana for a 4/5 because you can always put the +1/+1 counter on itself. Vigilance is a nice ability, not super impactful, but protection from multicolored has proven to be a very relevant ability right now. It protects you from Teferi, it lets you get through Uro, it lets you get around, Uro, all of the companions, it lets you dodge some removal spells that people play, it gets around Deafening Clarion, so I think that it's just really well positioned. And because it gives your +1/+1 counter holding creatures some second life, it lets you, respond to a sweeper by making a bunch of 2/2 knights. It just does a whole lot for 4 mana. I don't think that it will see a lot of play if things stay in this unfair place where no one gets to live past turn 5. But if we can get that tamped down and we get into a more mid-rangey place, it is a very powerful mid-range card.
Yeah, no, the rate, just like the pure purchasing price, like, yeah, it wants you to play like stuff with +1/+1 counters, like that's cool and all, but like the pure just like rate with doing nothing for it is just really good. Like the fact that it triggers itself if you put the counter on itself, and it's just like a 4 mana 4/5 vigilant pro multicolor. When it dies, make a 2/2. That's just good, rates,
Yep. It asks nothing of you, and if you work for it even a little bit, you get sweeper protection. 2/2 Knight with Vigilance is also a really good token to make when stuff's dying. So I think that Basri's Lieutenant could definitely see a lot of play. And I think that it's worth mentioning, and maybe we'll talk about it in the overrated cards for white, but there's a standout card that I think people would expect to hear as the best card in white that I think is not very good right now.
Yeah, I think we're on the same page.
Overrated white cards. Do you know which card I'm going to say?
I think I do, Gino. I think it's also the same one I have, so...
So let's agree. Baneslayer Angel.
Yep, that's the one.
So it's 3 white. It's a reprint. It's a 5/5 angel with flying first strike, lifelink, protection from demons, and protection from dragons. So Baneslayer Angel in its time was the alpha dog of white decks. It was the endpoint. I think was it Zendikar Standard?
Ew. It was in core. I think it was in core like M12, right? So whatever. Well, I'm not sure though. Not gonna be honest.
When it was first printed, it was basically the best thing you could do in white. You would play Baneslayer Angel. Everything that came down before it would be outclassed by the Angel. You would win every race because you've got this 5/5 lifelink first strike flying that no one could block profitably. Protection from demons and dragons is not necessarily just trinket text. Some of the best cards in most standards are demons or dragons. So it did a nice job of mopping those up.
Oh, you're right. It was Zendikar Standard. Because I remember Halo Hunter was a card that was printed that killed angels, but it was a demon. And people were like, really?
Yep. So Baneslayer Angel is this card that is not super... It looks and reads really powerfully, right? But we're not in a place right now where 5/5 flying first strike lifelink protection from demons or dragons for 5 mana is a thing that I want to do. Once we're at 5 mana, if my opponent hasn't killed me or set up a Wilderness Wreck or set up a Planeswalker that's snowballing, I don't want to play a Baneslayer Angel when my opponent has Teferi.
Oh, yeah, that's what I was going to say. Just imagine tapping 5 for a thing, and then your opponent just goes, whoop, back to hand. Oh, I can't. It's just so bad. It's so bad. Well, okay, there's one. It could see sideboard play. Like Lyra Dawnbringer last, like, back on Dominaria when that was printed, which is basically this. Saw a little sideboard play. Like, it can be good if your opponent has, like, no removal for it and has no way to take it off the play. Like, in a creature v creature tumble, this card's still quite good, but it's definitely overrated. Like, this card's bad in a lot of scenarios. I think it's a victim of power creep, which is unfortunate because I own an Italian foil one that I used to play in Modern Blue-White Control, but it's not nearly good enough anymore. So,
yeah,
what can you do?
It's not that it's not well statted. It is a incredibly powerful card if you can untap with it and you can attack with it, and that attack matters. But right now, attacking with creatures, especially 5-mana creatures, like you can kill someone on turn 4 as long as you're curving out with creatures, but I don't want to have to, hold on to the seat of my pants and then try to ride out a Baneslayer Angel. Like,
yeah.
Your opponents just kill you too fast, or they kill you by such a large degree that the 5 life a turn is not relevant. So I think it's just really poorly positioned for how the format is currently playing out. It doesn't interact with enchantments. It doesn't interact with instants. Like, it doesn't do something as soon as it comes into play. It doesn't have haste. So it's a really hard bargain to play this card. Like, if you can't play Questing Beast because it's not relevant, coming down a turn earlier with haste and only 1 fewer power, I don't know that you can play Baneslayer Angel.
Yeah, it's not its time. Maybe post-rotation, things will be better, and Baneslayer. I hope Baneslayer Angel is a card people can play. Because if Baneslayer is a card people can play, that means Standard's in a good place. So I hope, but right now, absolutely not. So
what is your underrated card for white?
Yeah, no. So I would say it's Ruined Halo. So I think people I don't think anyone's really been talking about this card at all. But the amount of utility that this card has, I think it's it can do so. It's so flexible in the amount of stuff. It can stop you from dying to a game-winning combo. It can prevent creatures from specific. It's obviously only good in specific decks, but in those decks, I think this card will shine. And also a combo that I won't be around for very long because of rotation, but a combo that I've heard nobody talk about, but I think it might be good, maybe. I'm not going to go as far as say it is good because Wilderness Reclamation is probably going to stop anything from being good, but the fact you can play this card and then name Command the Dreadhorde and then you just don't take damage to your Command the Dreadhorde is kind of sweet. And
That's very funny.
I'm going to definitely be doing that. So, I don't know. I remember seeing that. I'm like, wait a minute. I can just do that. And then it's because people used to do that with the Wanderer, I believe it was called.
Yes.
And Ruined Halo is just so much better than the Wanderer.
Yeah,
come on now.
You can always play Ruined Halo on turn 2, stop your opponent's aggressive card, and then flicker Ruined Halo with Yorion.
Yeah, Yorion, and get it ready to go. And also, with what's called the cycling deck, if you just put this naming Helix Flare, whatever the card, the 4-mana, deal the damage equal to the cycles. Zenith Flare. You name Zenith Flare, and then, their deck stops working. So, yeah, I think there's a lot to be said for this card. I'm not going to say it's going to be everywhere, because it's not. It's not going to be everywhere. But I think this card is very underrated.
So Ruined Halo, if you don't know it, it's white for an enchantment. When it enters the battlefield, choose a card name, and you have protection from the chosen card name. So It's a reprint from Shadowmoor?
Yeah. And I think it was reprinted once other time, but I don't know.
So my underrated card is actually a common. It is Staunch Shieldmate. 1 white for a 1/3. Very unsexy, but this is the best rate that they have ever printed for a 1/3. 1/3s are traditionally 2-mana cards. This one is a 1-mana card, and being half as expensive is a huge deal. And this card is just really well set up to shut down every aggressive start that we see in current standard. There are no 1-mana 2, there's only a handful of 1-mana 2/2s, and most of them require setup, and they're in green. Almost all of the other 1-mana cards are 2/1s or worse, or 1/1s. And this boy comes down and he just shuts them all down, every single one, and survives it.
Wait, you were talking about standard? Oh, okay, we were talking a little about this card limited, and I was like, okay, I can get, standard though?
I want this card in my sideboard if I'm playing against mono red or if I'm playing against mono black. it
All
just blocks really, really well. What is the thing that gets around it or through it without losing value? Like, you're going to use a removal spell on a 1-mana 1/3? No.
Yeah. All right.
Like, it blocks literally every red 1-drop profitably and survives. It blocks literally every black 1-drop.
Well, Mr. Knight has something to say, but besides that, nothing.
Mr. Knight, if you're going to spend 3 mana to kill my 1-drop, and you've time walked yourself to do it, that's outstanding. That's great. I wish my 1-drops did that.
Knight of the Ebon Legion's really good though too. So that's not fair to say on my part. Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
I can see it.
I'm honestly, I'd rather have Staunch Shieldmate block a Knight of the Ebon Legion and have my opponent pump it and take off their turn 3 to do that than any of the other interactions I have with the Knight, other than killing him on the spot. And so I just think that this guy is just such a powerful card on rate that it's against a red player, right? How many turns do you think this guy buys you if you just play him on turn 1?
Probably, yeah. Fair enough. I think, yeah. Okay. I'm with you. There are a lot of 2/1s right now. A lot of
2/1s and 1/1s in that red deck, and they can't remove him. Like, you're 2-for-1ing yourself if you just want to remove him. Like, you're going to go ahead and block with a Fervent Champion and a Shock to kill this 1-drop.
Yeah.
That's the only interaction I see that you don't 2-for-1 yourself. Or you have to wait until like turn 3 or 4 to get through with a Flamekin. Steamkin.
Yeah. Fair enough. Okay. All right. Fair enough.
I just think he's got great stats. I don't know if he'll see main deck play. I assume
Main
not.
deck? Yeah,
I
don't
assume
think
not.
so.
Unless we get into a very different place, because he's obviously not very good on a neutral board. He's not very good against opponents who, if you're trying to race your opponent, he's not outstanding. The 1/3 is not a terrible stat line for attacking. I wouldn't want to play him. But I think as a sideboard card, this is a really underrated card. It just brick walls a bunch of stuff, and people have sideboarded in Omen Speaker, and I think this card's better than that.
Yeah. All right. Awesome. That
So-
makes sense.
Let's bop over to blue.
Yeah.
What do we think is the Stone Cold best card in blue? I think
there's a few coming here, but I think it's contextual, right? Like, do we want to, when I was thinking about this, I'm like, do we want to say what we think the most powerful card in blue is, generally, speaking, or do we want to say the card that's going to ruin standard for the next 3 months?
Why don't you go with the one that's going to ruin standard for the next 3 months? I'll go with the one that I think there are 2 that are tied for most powerful overall in all formats, but I think that the one that's going to ruin standard is pretty obvious.
Okay, I'll do the one that is it. So it's Rewind. That's the one that's going to ruin standard for the next 3 months. People do not
disagree.
know. You disagree? Okay.
Go ahead. Go explain why you think it's Rewind, and I'll make my argument for why I think Rewind's okay.
Okay. So Wilderness Reclamation, we already know is the best deck in the format, and they're the reason that their deck is so good is because they're able to get out their mana really fast and then double it with Wilderness Reclamation. And Rewind allows you to have those even more tempo turns where you can just go, where you go let's say you thought it was bad when your opponent goes turn 2 Growth Spiral into Wilderness Reclamation and to untap your lands, counter one thing, just to literally the top of their range now because of Rewind is they can go turn 3, have 5 counter spells up. They're going to have 5 counter spells up by turn 3. That is obviously that's the ridiculous. That's usually not going to happen. But now, we're taking the ceiling and we're moving it up even more. It's just, and also, of course, 4K and counterspell. You're okay, people playing Mystical Dispute, so this isn't going to be as good. But you're going to play Mystical Dispute as well, so you have your Mystical Disputes to beat their Mystical Disputes. And against any deck that's not blue, they're just never going to resolve a spell again. I just want to cast my spells, and it's just not going to happen anymore. I'm telling you, cards gonna do it. It's going to do us dirty with Wilderness Reclamation.
I agree with the power of Rewind plus Wilderness Rec. My concerns with it are just that it's a 4-mana counterspell. And because of Teferi and Teferi's continued presence in the format, because for some reason he still gets to exist, Teferi Time Raveler in this case.
Yes.
Having a counterspell that can't counter Teferi ever on curve is just a really big ask for me. And even if the upside of Rewind is very high, it's basically a free counterspell if you get it off. Having to hold up 4 mana just makes proactive play, difficult. Rewind is amazing if you can respond to your opponent and then cast Rewind, and then you get to double up your value.
Yeah,
Rewind is terrible at protecting your stuff because you have to leave up 4 mana to have Rewind available to you. So you can't just it's hard to do an explosion for max value and also hold up Rewind. Unless you've got multiple Wilderness Wrecks, in which case, how are you losing that game? So I just think that Rewind is exceptional in the spots that Wilderness Wreck was already exceptional. It just makes you win even harder. It shuts the door on your opponent entirely. But in the situations where Wilderness Wreck was already a dog, it doesn't help you at all.
Yeah, here's I obviously Teferi Time Raveler, Rewind's really bad against Teferi Time Raveler, but the Wilderness Reclamation deck is already so skewed towards beating Teferi Time Raveler because Teferi Time Raveler's literally the antithesis of their deck. I just don't think that that's going to be as much of a problem. They have so many cards to answer Teferi because of how much of a threat Teferi Time Raveler is against it. And also another thing I didn't mention about Rewind is when you don't have Wilderness Reclamation, you can kind of emulate having Wilderness Reclamation by using Rewind to counter a spell and get that mana doubling effect. So now you just have even more mana doubling. But I get what you're saying. It doesn't help in where it needs help, but I'm not even sure if it needs help against Teferi. Teferi is a card in the format, and Wilderness Reclamation is still everywhere. Everywhere. The deck has clearly learned how to beat Teferi Time Raveler. I don't think Teferi Time Raveler is enough to keep it down. So we'll see.
Sure.
We will see.
I think we'll see. I think Rewind will definitely be competing for a main board slot in Wilderness Wreck. The question is going to be the number. Will it be 1 or 2? Or will it get all the way up to 3 or 4? I'm not sure where it's going to end up, but it's definitely going to see play.
Yeah, it's miles better than Neutralize. You kidding?
Yeah.
Oh my god. But
I agree. So the card I was thinking was Teferi Master of Time.
Really? Oh, you thought he was over? You thought he was too good?
I think he's the best blue card.
Sure.
So my argument is it's 2 blue for a 3 loyalty Planeswalker Teferi. He has the static ability. You may activate loyalty abilities of Teferi Master of Time on any player's turn at any time you control. You could cast an instant. +1, draw a card, then discard a card. -3, target creature you don't control phases out. Which phasing, that's back.
Phasing's back,
but just for him. And phasing means treat that creature and anything attached to it as though they don't exist until its controller's next turn. So it basically wipes them away for a full turn cycle, and then -10, take 2 extra turns after this one. So Teferi, because of that static ability, is able to activate on your turn and your opponent's turn, and it's at instant speed. So there's a play pattern here that no Planeswalker has ever had. You can actually be reactive with Teferi Master of Time, which is something Planeswalkers never get to do. And for good reason. Teferi Master of Time, when he comes down, you're almost always going to +1 him, in which case you're going to loot once. Then on your opponent's turn, if they play a haste creature, usually your Teferi would be in trouble. But he's not. You just -3 him and phase the card out, and he buys himself a turn cycle of staying in play. If your opponent does some sort of trick, you can respond to their trick by phasing the card that they played the trick on out. If for some reason there's a creature that is a really big deal and you just can't block it, you can wait till the coast is completely clear and then react to it. And if you don't need to react, you are now looting twice a turn cycle, gaining 2 loyalty every turn cycle, which is really powerful. He's basically a 5 loyalty after his first turn cycle, which is a very strong place to be to just avoid, just outrace the damage that he's going to be taking. And looting twice a turn, just the velocity that gives you and the amount of graveyard filling that it gives you is really relevant with the types of stuff people are doing right now. It's really good with Uro. It's really good with any of the escape cards, frankly. A lot of the black cards from this set also have graveyard synergies. We've got jumpstart cards. It also synergizes really well with the looting cards. So what's her name? The red-blue legendary from Ikoria.
Red-blue legendary from Ikoria.
She's a mythic. Whenever you discard a card...
Riel the Everwise. Yeah.
He plays really well with Riel the Everwise.
Wait, that's from Eldraine, right? So
No. She was from Ikoria.
Really? Oh.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, that set had a bunch of busted mythics. So Teferi obviously triggers her once every turn cycle by himself. And so I just think that getting to 10 with him is not that hard. The amount of card selection he offers you is exceptional, and the way he protects himself is actually quite good. Phasing out at instant speed, I think, is comparable to bouncing something. You get to do that every 2 turn cycles, basically, phase something out. So he just lets you manipulate the board in a way that you wouldn't necessarily expect just reading the card. And I think that all of those abilities combined put him in a rare class, with especially the planeswalkers from this set, other than Ugin, and we'll talk about Ugin at some point.
Oh yeah, Ugin. I don't think anyone's sleeping on Ugin now.
No.
But yeah, no, Teferi has a special place in my heart for many reasons. One, because most of my, or a vast majority of my competitive success in Magic has been due to casting Teferi in some form. So
there's literally never been a bad one.
Unless you count the dual deck one, which actually isn't even that bad. But
Yep.
but yeah, you're right. And then, so like that, obviously Teferi is a special place in my heart because of that. And then also, this Teferi, I think is super sweet because, obviously bringing it back to World Gorger, this is the only planeswalker you can use to infinitely loop with World Gorger Dragon, which I think is so cool. Is it good? Definitely not, but it's super cool. But actually, getting back to more like the pragmatic, like how good this card is. Yeah, I think this card plays a lot better than people are kind of get. Like when people first read it, they're like, oh, it starts at 3. That's kind of low, but not really because the pluses. Like exactly right. That's why not really. So. And then, like, the fact phasing out is a little better, I think, than people think. Because, like, let's say your opponent attacks, like, with something, and then you phase it out. Then it comes back tapped, so it can't attack again. So it's, like, disabled for 2 turns, which is also really good. And the fact you can do it all instant speed is really good. So, like, it's kind of the more than some of its parts. I think it's... Man, I don't know how... It's, like, there's too much going on here, like, for me to evaluate, like, how good exactly it is. It's definitely powerful, but...
Yeah, I think that it's the type of card that it comes down, it starts taking over the game immediately, and if your opponent doesn't deal with it in a turn cycle or 2, just the card selection alone is going to make it very difficult for your opponent to come back. If you can do anything to break the parity, like with graveyard synergies, any sort of additional card draw matters sort of stuff, if you try even a little bit, I think that he runs away with the game very fast.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's just, but what you were saying with running away with the game, I think it's a little nicer than like old cards used to run away with the game, where like you can come back from it, right? Like let's say my opponent has Teferi in play for 2 turns and they loot 4 times, like that's very good. But that's not like I'm just completely screwed. Like versus, let's say I let my opponent have Uro in the play for 2 turns. My opponent like drew 3 cards, gained 9 life, and got to play 3 extra lands. And oh wait, they have a 6/6 they're going to bring back later. Like I think you can come back from Teferi. Like Teferi,
I think you can, but Teferi's power is in that he is what's making it more likely that your opponent untaps with Uro.
Yeah.
He's the thing that makes those other degenerate cards more consistent. He's going to find you those cards, delay your opponent enough so that they can't do anything. He's very similar, I think, to Teferi Time Raveler, honestly. He comes down, and as soon as he comes down, he shuts down some ways that your opponent was trying to interact with you. He digs you very deep. If he dies, you don't actually care that much. He probably got you a bunch of value before he died. And if he doesn't die, unlike Teferi Time Raveler, if he doesn't die, he just ends the game. Like, take 2 extra turns is enough to bury anyone.
Yeah.
So I just think that he's a role... In some ways, he's a role player, but if you're good enough at your role, or you have enough little edges of value, you just become an incredibly good card.
Yeah, this card's much less obnoxious than Teferi Time Raveler, though. Like, much less obnoxious.
We'll find out. It might end up being just as obnoxious.
No, I'm willing to bet. Like, Teferi Time Raveler is one of the most obnoxious cards Wizards has ever printed. Like, it might not be the best card, but it is easily the most obnoxious. Like, the amount of stuff Teferi just says, yeah, you can't do that anymore. Like, unreal.
Yeah, I will say, at the very least, when Teferi Master of Time comes out, you can't play him on turn 2 with a ramp spell or with a goose, which will make him infinitely better. 4 mana is a better cost for a powerful planeswalker than 3.
Like, at least my cards still work if I'm my opponent. It's not like, oh, this counterspell just has no text on it anymore. Or like, oh, this suspend card? Oh, nice meme. Like, at least I get to play Magic, you know?
So what do we think for underrated cards in blue?
Yeah. So I have a good one here that I don't think many people have been talking about, or at least I haven't heard it a lot. So I think Reign of Revelation, super underrated card. So it's like you look at it and you're like, oh, it's another one of those 4-mana draw 2-ish kind of things that Standards had many times before. Like we saw Glimmer Genius, and we have Chemister's Insight, and now we have this. So okay, like what next? Whatever. But I think this card is like compares very favorably to all of the other kind of draw 2-ish with a little bit of upside kind of cards, where it's the fact that you can draw 3 at instant speed. And, like, the instant speed is obviously like what makes
That's
it.
the thing.
And, yeah, that's the thing. And like drawing 3 and discarding a card is kind of comparable to casting 2 copies of Chemister's Insight. Because like when you cast the second copy, you discard a card, so you're kind of like just drawing 4, discarding 2, which is like a little better, but you're also paying 8 mana to do that. So this kind of gives you most of the value of Chemister's Insight, of both halves of Chemister's Insight, on like the front half. So it's like almost not quite doubly better, but almost doubly better than Chemister's Insight. And also it plays really well. I don't know if you'll see play in Wilderness Reclamation, but it plays well with that kind of stuff. This is kind of one of those cards I think is going to see a lot more play post-rotation in like a regular old control deck. When Teferi Time Raveler is gone and Wilderness Reclamation is gone, people can like cast, like, I don't know, Absorb. No, I guess Absorb's going to be gone. So like, people can cast Neutralize again. I think this card's going to be very good.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's one of the best 4-mana draw spells that they've printed in a while.
Yeah,
it's just great on rate. It asks nothing of you. You're going to cast it on your opponent's end step when they don't want to play into your rewind, and you're going to get ahead of them.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think the only 4-mana draw that's better than this is literal Fact or Fiction. Like, that's how good I think this card is. Like, yeah, if they printed Foff, like, sure, whatever, play Foff, but minus Foff, this card's I think the best. So
I don't disagree. It's subtly incredibly strong.
Yeah.
So the underrated card for me is Stormwing Entity. I don't know if people are saying this card's incredibly good or what, but I haven't seen a lot of talk about it. It's 3 blue for a 3/3 elemental. This spell costs 2 and a blue less to cast if you cast an instant or sorcery spell this turn. It is flying, prowess, and when it enters the battlefield, scry 2. So Stormwing Entity is basically a Spells Matter payoff card, and I think in Standard it's pretty strong. Like, if you play it with Opt, if you play it with Crash Through, which just got reprinted, any 1-mana, if you play it with Shock, any 1-mana instant or sorcery, you're going to get to play a 3/3 Flying Prowess, Scry 2 for 2 mana after that. So that's obviously incredibly powerful on rate. It's going to go really well in your Arclight Phoenix style decks. And it gives that deck another body that matters to go along with the Phoenixes, and that pressures very well. Like, Crackling Drake is no longer playable, but I think that Stormwing Entity does a lot of what Crackling Drake did for the deck for cheaper.
Man, that's sad. Crackling Drake not being playable anymore.
I know, it sucks. I keep trying to play it, and I keep losing.
Yeah.
But Stormwing Entity is really exciting when you get to Modern and to Legacy, where Phyrexian Mana cards and Manamorphose exist. Because with Manamorphose, this card is almost always 2 mana, if you have the Manamorphose. With Phyrexian Mana cards, it is always 2 mana. So in that position, it's, I think, comparable to something like a Delver of Secrets in terms of the amount of velocity it gives you. Scry 2 is no joke when it comes into play. That's almost draw a card. The prowess makes it close games really quickly. And so I think that this card, just on rate, if you can enable it, will do a whole lot for you. It's the kind of thing that you can get down on turn 2 in those formats and then just protect the queen from there on out. And it really asks your opponent to deal with it or die.
Yeah. No, it's actually kind of funny how those blue-red, like, prowessy kind of spells deck, like Izzet Phoenix was the most notable one. I feel like they need something like Faithless Looting again. Like, maybe not crazy as Faithless Looting, but if they can get that, then, like, it's a whole different ball game. Because, like, I remember watching Faithless Looting get banned. That deck literally just committed suicide. Like, it just literally went from, like, 12, it was like 15% of the meta, or like 10% of the meta, it's like nothing. So I think this card is very powerful, but yeah, I don't know. I don't think it's its time right now. I think it's very good. I think it's just not the right time, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it makes sense. I would seriously look at this card in the Thing in the Ice slot.
Yeah.
In a main deck for an Izzet Phoenix sort of deck. And I'd like to see this card revitalize that deck. I mean, it's one of my favorite decks to play, or favorite styles of deck to play. Though I agree, like, at this point, cheating 2 or 3 Phoenixes into play on turn 3 or 4 is just not what any format's about. Like, that's not enough anymore.
Well, it's like hard to do, right? Like with Faithless Looting, you just want like turn 1 looting, discard my 2 Phoenixes, like done. But like, how do you get 3 Phoenixes in the graveyard now? There's just not really a good way to do it anymore.
You know yourself and you cross your fingers.
Yeah, right. So exactly. I still do think if people were able to put like 3 Phoenixes to play on turn 3, that would be good enough. But it's just not consistent anymore. It's just not without looting. Looting was a big hit for these prowess decks. Huge hit even. So and there's nothing to replace it.
What do we think's an overrated card?
Oh yeah, there's like honestly, I was gonna say See the Truth, but yeah, I think it's overrated. Like obviously you'll see. Actually, I was gonna say like obviously it's gonna see play in the Underworld.
What is See the
Breach
Truth
deck.
before we go?
Yes, of course. My apologies. So 1 in a blue sorcery. You look at the top 3. You put 1 to your hand, and the rest in the bottom. However, if it was played from any other zone besides your hand, it was casted from any other zone besides your hand. You just get all 3 of them. It's not draw 3, but you just put all 3 of them in your hand. So it's essentially draw 3, but it actually gets around Narset. So
gets around Narset. Yep.
Yeah, so it's like better than draw 3. So obviously, like this card's, everyone's like, oh, Underworld Breach Pioneer, and like, yeah, it'll probably see play there, and like the card's good, but like I don't know, the amount of like fanboying I've been seeing over this card, like the front half's not good. Like
front half is worse Anticipate.
Yeah, Anticipate's not good, and making Anticipate a sorcery is like a big downside because one of the Anticipate's not good. Anticipate's not good. But one of the saving graces of Anticipate was the fact that it was an instant. So you could hold something up and then they didn't do anything. All right, end step Anticipate, look for something else. But this can't even do that. So yeah, this card will probably see play, but I think people are going to be disappointed by this card. I think it'll see some play, but not nearly as much. People have been going. The only reason I say is because this card's good. But the reason I'm saying it's overrated is because people have been going crazy over this card. Like, oh my god, draw 3 for 2 mana. Gee, I was going crazy over this card when it first came out. But then I thought about it a little more, and I'm like, yeah, it's not quite that. It's not quite that. They're like, Snapcaster Mage, draw 3. And I'm like, well, you're paying 4 mana for a 2/1 that draws 3. Okay.
I think that the big knock for me, and I was someone who was like, oh man, we're just going to play this with Underworld Breach and it's going to be great. And in that circumstance, I think it's going to be pretty good. But the value of cards like this that are super cheap that draw you multiple cards is that you can play them early. If you can play them early or for 1 mana without too many hoops, for example, Treasure Cruise, one of the reasons why Treasure Cruise was so good is because you were playing a normal attrition game and then eventually you cast a 1 mana draw 3. To play See the Truth that way, it's never going to be a 1 mana draw 3 or a 2 mana draw 3. It's going to be 4, or it's going to require some sort of setup like Underworld Breach, in which case, again, it's 4 mana because you're playing the Breach and then you're playing the See the Truth. So you're never going to be able to cast this without some sort of elaborate setup on it that I think really limits its power level. Because once you're going to the trouble of enabling something, then the payoff has to be very big. The sorts of payoffs you can get when you've enabled See the Truth, also you could be winning the game. You could be, milling your entire deck. All the things that you have to do to make See the Truth above rate also apply to other effects or combos that just have bigger payoffs. So I'm just concerned that the base case of this thing being Sorcery Speed Anticipate is not good enough to make up for the fact that when you're doing it, quote unquote, you're getting something that's comparable to some of the best cards ever, best draw spells ever printed, but you just have to jump through enough of a hoop that I'm not that interested in it. There's not too many cards that I would cut in, well, maybe in those decks, I don't play the Through the Breach deck in Pioneer, so maybe there is some chaff there that you can just cut for See the Truth.
Yeah.
And this card, I think, only goes in unfair decks.
Yeah, no, I agree. Actually, it's really interesting to kind of further elaborate on that point about the Pioneer deck. Is the most obvious, I think, switch that you can make with See the Truth, put See the Truth in the deck, is cutting strategic planning. But when you think about it for a little bit, that's not even that good. Because strategic planning, when you first cast it, being able to put more cards in your graveyard enables the breach. And then if you're Underworld breaching See the Truth versus Underworld breaching strategic planning, it's not even that much better to draw all 3 of the cards.
You don't want the cards in your hand.
Yeah, putting the cards in your graveyard is good for Underworld Breach, which you haven't played because you're casting it off Underworld Breach. it's not even like that much better when you're doing the thing, because like planning is really important in that deck. Like that's like Underworld Breach is a weird deck in Pioneer, but yeah, the fact that strategic planning is such like I think strategic planning is like a pivotal piece in that deck. So cutting it for something like Sea of Truth, I don't know, man. I don't know.
Yeah, and outside of that, I think the other obvious combo is Snapcaster Mage. And again, if you're playing a Snapcaster Mage deck, I don't know that I want this card to be the target for it. I think that I probably want to be grabbing a Cryptic Command or a Mana Leak. I want to be grabbing something that impacts the board, because those decks don't want for cards.
Oh, and they do not want to tap out. They do not want to tap out on their turn. Like most of those most Snapcaster decks do not want to tap out on their turn.
They don't want to tap out or spend 4 mana on their turn so that they can draw 3 random cards.
Yeah, we can already do that with Fact or Fiction. Like,
and we don't do it.
And we don't do it. It's crazy. Oh, you're right.
I agree, and that was the card I was going to call out as well, because it reads really well. Just one other, just a little hobby horse of mine, something that it's not an underrated, or I mean, maybe it's underrated. Discontinuity. That card, I just want to say, with Song of Creation, Discontinuity. It's 3 blue, and as long as it's your turn, it costs 2 blue less to cast, so it's just 2 mana, and then it's an instant, and it says end the turn. So if you're playing a Song of Creation deck, you can, on your turn, just Discontinuity as the last thing you do, and then you're going to get to keep all the cards you drew.
Yeah, +2 for casting the Discontinuity. So, yeah.
So I want that card to see play. It's not very good, but I want to see it see play.
For what it's worth, if I think Discontinuity and Song of Creation are like peas in a pod. Like
they're bestest friends.
Excellent synergy. Like also the fact that Discontinuity they can also like end the turn of your opponent's turn to like buy you time. Yeah. I think Discontinuity and Song of Creation are like perfect together. Like so good. I don't know.
Wild cards to get that.
Yeah, 4 mythic wild cards. Well, we'll see. You probably don't want to do it till rotation, so you know.
So now on to black. What do we think is the best black card in this set?
Yeah, there's a few. Like, there's nothing really that stands out so much with black, but I could just go with our good old friend. Like, so with the black cards, there's like a lot of the best cards are actually not in the rare slot. Ironically enough, agreed. Like the rares are kind of like all duds, but the uncommons and commons. So I think like there's like a few that we could choose from here that are like pretty good, and like I think depending on the format you go to, but I think it's gotta be Village Rites. Like Village Rites is really, really good because like you.
And what does it do?
Yes, my apologies. So Village Rites is 1 black mana, singular, very important. Costs just 1 black for an instant speed, also important, and as an additional cost, you sacrifice a creature and then you draw 2 cards. So there's this card called Altar's Reap, which has existed like since forever. I don't know when it was first printed. I don't even care.
Zendikar or something?
Sure. Zendikar. Okay. It was printed at some point very way back. Like way back before I started playing Magic. And it's always been consistently terrible. And Wizards has brought it back in like many different ways or many different reprints or like.
It's always a good limited card. It plays super well with your red, black, Steel Things deck. But it's always been like the edge of playable for Standard. It's always so close, but never makes it.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, it's always been kind of whatever. Like, I don't know. It's fine. It's always fine. It's never good enough. It's never good enough. Never, ever good enough. Like, no matter what the Standard, even like in old Standard formats, because this has been around, like, I know it was printed once in Dark Ascension, so it's been around for longer than I've been playing. So, card's been around for, like, ever, and it's never, ever good enough. Even, like, you can't even say Power Brief. It's just never been good enough. But... And then you could look at a different card that was printed also a million quintillion times in Prophetic Prism. So Prophetic Prism is an artifact that costs 2 mana, and when it enters the battlefield, it draws a card, and then you can tap it and a colorless mana, or any mana you want. It can be generic. Sorry, I forgot colorless is like a different thing now, so I gotta be careful. So you got it and any like generic mana, and you add 1 mana of any color. And this is also a card that is like just never been good enough. Like it's been around forever, and it's never ever been good enough ever. It's like almost. It was actually it was good once in the Paradoxical Outcome. Like
hell yeah, I played the hell out of that card.
It was good in that one time. It was good enough. So, but then you discount it from 2 to 1. And it's like, okay, now we're talking. So in the example of Prophetic Prism, we got Arkham's Astrolabe. And that card is pretty good.
It's busted in every format it's in.
Yeah, card's pretty good. So it got banned in Pauper. So that's something to be said there. So and then we go to Village Rites. So we take this marginal effect at 2 mana and we half its cost to 1. I think the transition from 2 to 1 mana is the most important. The second most important discount you can do on a card. If you want to up the card's playability, making it go from 2 to 1, just it's like a shot of roids in the arm. It's so much. If you're discounting it by 1, the only one that's more than that is going from 1 to 0, which when things start costing 0, it's like, oh god. So this is the only reasonable discount that really kind of shoots up the power level. So this card in sacrifice strategies can be very good. Also, just generally in creature strategies, it's going to be very good because 1 minute draw 2 is insane. And
it's always good if your opponent. Once you're at 1 mana, you can play this in a regular deck, and you can just have it when your opponent's trying to cast a point removal spell.
Yep.
Your opponent's going to Teferi your thing. Well, you can't do that because you can't cast it instant speed. But if your opponent was going to cast a kill spell on your creature, you just Village Rites it, and now you've 2-for-1 them. Yep. It plays well with all of your sacrifice synergies that you're already running, and worst comes to worst, it lets you cycle 2 cards.
Yeah, it's also an excellent sacrifice outlet. Sure, it's not repeatable, that's fair, but just for a one-off sack, excellent outlet, very good. So, card's very good. I think it'll see play in every format. So, maybe not Legacy, but definitely down to Modern. It'll definitely see play, no doubt.
So for me, I'm going to go with Silver Smoke Ghoul. Which is 2 and a black for a 3/1 zombie vampire, 2 good creature types. Yeah. At the beginning of your end step, if you gain 3 or more life this turn, return Silver Smoke Ghoul from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped, and then 1 generic and a black, sacrifice Silver Smoke Ghoul, draw a card. So Silver Smoke Ghoul, I think, is a terrible card to play fairly.
Yep.
However, if you're playing unfairly at all, this is a free card. That's just going to keep coming back. It can block. It can't block if you played it from your graveyard, but gaining 3 life is actually pretty trivial in most circumstances. So if you can self-mill yourself even a little bit and then gain 3 life, you get every Silver Smoke Ghoul that's in your graveyard to come back. So it's yet another way for a deck that maybe wants to do Stitcher Supplier things, something that wants to do what's the landfall card that comes back?
Landfall comes. Bloodghast, of course.
Bloodghast. Yeah, any of those sorts of decks that just wanted to fill up the graveyard full of garbage and then reanimate, this is yet another one of those payoffs, and 3/1's a great stat line for that.
Oh yeah.
And it also draws a card. You can also, worst comes to worst, if you bring it back and it's not good, you just burn it.
Yeah,
and keep going.
For rules spells, point at it, you got 2 mana up, boom, card, easy. So, card's good. Card's definitely good. Honestly, I think it's going to be at best in the life game strategies. I know this is it could be good. The ceiling of this card is very high, which the ceiling of this card I think is exactly, you mill 5 cards, you mill over 3 of these in a Creeping Chill, and your opponent just goes and cries. I think that's the ceiling. But even if you don't go all the way to the top there, I think this card is gaining 3, I feel like the hard part is not bringing it back from the graveyard, but the gaining the life part. Because graveyard decks don't often gain life. They don't, or they're not trying. Creeping Chill, I think, is the only really gain life card that graveyard decks usually play. So you gotta work a little bit for it, I think.
Well, Luris.
Yeah, you gotta hit him with a Luris, though, which ain't the easiest thing in the world. But that's also not really okay. Maybe we're thinking of different types of graveyard decks here. I was talking more the dredgy kind of flip over my deck.
Oh yeah. I think that you would need to jigger those decks a little bit differently to make Silver Smoke Ghoul work in them. Yeah. But I think that this enables a different kind of graveyard deck.
That's fair.
Which is what I like about it. It's not just going to jam directly into those existing ones, although it plays well with many of the enablers that those decks want. It just asks for a different way to bring this thing back. But in return, you get something that can trigger Dredge by itself. It's got the ability to block. It's more powerful on rate than most of those other cards. It's an Icarid's stats instead of a 1/1 or a 2/1. So I think that it is powerful enough to see play just on rate, with in a graveyard deck.
Yeah,
if you're in a graveyard deck specifically. So it's strong. I don't know if it'll find a home immediately, but I think that this is the card that cheats it cheats in a way that cards I've seen before have cheated, and it does it better than some of those cards, and many of those cards have seen play.
Yeah, I also think it's be quite good. Like, even if you're not playing Graveyard, or if you're playing every time I see like a card like this, I'm like, is the life gain deck good enough? Like, maybe, because this does read like an unintuitive way where it actually has the Dawn of Hope text on it in a certain way. Where like wherever you gain life, you can pay 2 and draw a card. So it's a little different. Where it's like this is like says like if you gain 3 life in a turn, you can just sack this thing off and then immediately bring it back. So it can kind of be a card draw engine in a life gain deck as well, which is kind of cool. Like life gain needs cards, so I like it. I like it.
I also like that it doesn't require you to play black.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Oh, yeah. No, I agree. It's also nice you can just cast it and it enters untapped when you cast it, which is nice. So you can still block with it the first time. So yeah, card good. Good.
Any overrated cards you see?
Yeah. No, there's like obvious. Like there's an obvious one. Like I don't know. Like I guess like I could just point it out. And everyone's be like, yeah, okay.
Is it Grim Tutor?
Yeah,
it's talking about Grim Tutor.
And it's Grim Tutor.
Yeah. I don't know if that card's good.
It's not.
Anymore.
I can guarantee. It's not even better than Mastermind's Acquisition. I can guarantee you that. We don't even play Grim Tutor in Legacy anymore because Witchclaw Talisman is just so much better. Like ridiculously better. Like, this card just isn't good. Like, it's just the only reason this card was expensive is because it was printed literally once in, like, a 1999 starter deck. And that's it. It's the only time it was ever printed. So that's why it's so expensive. And EDH players like it because they can only play 1 copy of their cards. And once you kind of go down the tutor line, eventually you hit Grim Tutor. So, yeah.
Grim Tutor, in case you don't know, is 1 black for a sorcery. Search your library for a card, put that card into your hand, then shuffle your library. You lose 3 life. So I think that Grim Tutor, its time has just passed. Like, we have Witchclaw Talisman in Standard. People don't play it for the most part.
Thank God,
and that's
right?
2 mana, and it asks you to pay 3 mana in installations, and that card doesn't see play. So I don't think that you can add a 3 mana tax to any card in your deck and still have it be good enough. You can't take off turn 3 in Standard,
Nope.
And if you try, you'll get murdered.
Yeah, imagine, like, not only are you taking turn 3 off in Standard by casting this card, you are paying 3 life to take the turn 3 off in Standard. Like, my God. Like, no way. Not a chance. Also,
Format's too strong.
I don't want to be in a format where tutors are good. I'm just going to say it. But this is a good reprint, so I like it. It's overrated. I'm happy it's in the set, though. I wouldn't want it any other way. So, you know what?
Agreed.
Cool.
And now an underrated card in black.
Yeah, so the underrated card I think was also pretty. So I have a little story behind my underrated card here. So Mascar Worm is my pick, just so we know. So it's a reprint from Mirrodin Besieged, and it's 3 black for a 6/5. When it enters the battlefield, creatures your opponents control get -2/-2 until end of turn. And whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, that player loses 2 life. So this guy just apes on small creatures, basically is the idea. But the reason I'm picking this as my underrated card is because we actually played this for a non-zero amount of time in World Gorger Dragon in Legacy, because we were thinking like, okay, we need like some way to pivot against the Delver decks in Legacy. And we found this idiot because we can use Carpet in the combination with Carpet of Flowers and you can use Massacre Worm to just like clean up Delver boards. And I'm over here like, okay, if you could sweep up cards in Legacy, like with a 6-drop, I'm pretty sure you could sweep up cards in Standard with a 6-drop. And also this card reads like, if your opponent just has a bunch of little stuff, they take a lot of damage and are super behind. So I think this card, it also passes the test of where, we were talking about cards we were talking about it with Baneslayer Angel, cards have to like enter the battlefield or do something when they enter they have to do something right away or else they just get tucked away by Teferi. Well, this does something. So it passes that check. The vibe check is passed. I think this card will see play in definitely Standard, probably Pioneer, definitely not Modern because it's already in Modern. So yeah, that's where I'm at with Mascar Worm. So
yeah, I agree. I think Massacre Worm is it's in the running for like best black card. It's just a big dumb idiot who comes in, does something very powerful, and then that static effect, whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, that player loses 2 life. That's not just off the Massacre. So if that Massacre doesn't kill most of your opponent's stuff, and it's also one-sided, so you just -2/-2 your opponent's board, and then you swing. And if they trade, they're going to lose a bunch of life. Whatever didn't die from the -2/-2 will likely die from your swing. So it's just a big game ender. I just think that killing a bunch of creatures in the current Standard is not necessarily... Getting to 6 mana is hard, and then killing a bunch of creatures being relevant is also a big ask.
Yeah, I don't know if it's well positioned in Standard. Maybe not, this might not be its time, but I think this is a very powerful effect that people are sleeping on. So that's why it's hitting my underrated spot here. So
Yeah, for me, you know what? I'm going with a sideboard card, Necromentia. So it's one colorless black, or one generic black. Sorcery, choose a card name other than a basic land card name. Search target opponent's graveyard, hand, and library for any number of cards with that name and exile them. That player shuffles their library, then creates a 2/2 black zombie creature token for each card exiled from their hand this way. So this card is your standard cranial extraction, and they have been making this effect better and better and better every set. We just got what is the blue-black card?
Unmoored Ego.
Ego.
Yeah.
From Ravnica. That card let your opponent draw a card for every card you took from their hand, and making a 2/2 zombie is, I think, considerably worse than drawing a card in most cases. And this can name lands. It can name non-basic lands. So it's basically the best version of this effect that we've seen, I think. It's at 3 mana, which is, I think, the sweet spot. And I think that getting a 2/2 zombie for every card in your hand that gets taken is enough worse than drawing a card that now I might consider running this.
Yeah, absolutely. No, this card's very good. Like, it's definitely going to see sideboard play over, like, Unmoored Ego and all that stuff. Yeah, like, because, like, the nice thing is that a lot of the decks that a cranial extraction effect is good against, giving them a zombie doesn't matter. So that kind of works very well for the card. Like decks where you want a cranial extraction them aren't usually pressuring your light tool that much. So yeah, exactly. I think it mitigates the downside just by the way the card is made, which is great. So
yeah, I want to cast this against Wilderness Wreck. I want to cast this against green ramp decks, and those decks don't kill you with nickel and dime 2/2s. They kill you because they get to some gigantic Ugin or some gigantic killer card that you just can't deal with. And if you give your opponent a 2/2 zombie on the way to that, that's fine. But you can't let them keep their hand size. Like, you need to strip their hand. And stripping your opponent's hand and giving them 2/2s, like, even if they got 3 2/2s out of this, you're fine. You discarded 3 cards from their hand.
Yeah, which
totally okay with that.
Not only did you discard 3 cards, but you discarded probably a key card because you named that card. So
yes, you wanted that card gone.
Yeah.
The only way that you get blown out with this is if their hand was 4 copies, I think, of that card. In which case, man, if you end up getting rid of their key card, discard that, probably leave them with no hand left, and they get 8/8 worth of stats out of it, tough luck. But you're probably not even going to die.
I can think of one other way you could get blown out with this card. Not in Standard anymore, but it could have been in Standard. Veil of Summer.
Yes.
That card would still be legal right now if we didn't ban it.
Yeah, because you search
its target opponent, so it doesn't. It wouldn't work. Oh, it's just you name the card, then it would fizzle.
Awesome.
Excellent.
So now we move on to red. What do we think is the best red card in this set?
Yeah, there's a lot. I guess there's not. This is always funny whenever we say the best card, because it's another. I feel like this decision's also very format contextual, where like the best card in like Modern is definitely not going to be the best card in Standard, and but I'll just go with I think the most powerful card. I think that's usually the good go-to here. So Conspicuous Snoop I think is the most powerful red card we see in the set. So it's red 2/2 Goblin Rogue. Play the top card of your library reveal. You may cast goblin spells from the top of your library. So this is already so far, this is literally Mind's Desire for goblins on a 2/2 for 2, which is just wow. And then on top of that, it's on as long as the top card of your library is a goblin card, Conspicuous Snoop gets all activated abilities of that card. So this is just I think the best goblins card they've ever printed. Just not even close. I don't think it's remotely close. Or it might be close. They printed some pretty busted goblins. But I think it's
Goblin Lackey's pretty good.
Goblin Lackey's pretty good. But this is really good too. People have been talking also about obviously it's ridiculous in goblins. And also goblins is I don't know if it's a thing in Standard. It'll be a thing in Standard. I think there's enough goblins. But in Pioneer, in Modern, in Legacy, absolutely. This guy's going to go straight in there. Not even considering. But on top of that, on top of being one of the most ridiculous goblin enablers ever printed, in a tribe that actually already has some pretty good stuff going for it, It's also a 2-card combo with Boggart Harbinger. So the way it works is if you have Conspicuous Snoop in play and you cast Boggart Harbinger. So what Boggart Harbinger does is it's a black card, 1 black, 2 colorless for a 2/1. When it enters the battlefield, you may search your library for a goblin card, and then you put that card, or shuffle your library, put that card on top, and you reveal it, obviously. So yeah, so you reveal it's both the Conspicuous Snoop and the Boggart Harbinger. It's just kind of funny. But the way it works is then, so you cast the Boggart Harbinger, you search your library for Kiki Jiki, you put Kiki Jiki on top of your deck. Conspicuous Snoop gets the ability of Kiki Jiki, which doesn't actually read another creature. It reads target non-legendary creature. So you can copy Conspicuous Snoop like 50 quintillion times, but oh wait, they're all tapped, so you can't do anything. But wait, with the last one, you copy Boggart Harbinger again, and you research your deck for there's a bunch of things you can get. I think Mog Fanatic, there's a Mog Fanatic, is that the one that's a 1/1 that sacks?
Sacrifice it.
Yep, and it deals 1. So you can get that one. There's a bunch of them that you can get. I don't know all of them off the top of my head, but there's a bunch of goblins you can get that just
You can get Skirk Prospector, and you get infinite mana. You can get... there's a number of different goblins, and it's 2 mana for Future Sight for goblins. For personal Future Sight for goblins, and then it also has upside, and it's just on rate fine.
Yeah, the floor is the ceiling, and the ceiling is there's just no ceiling.
The ceiling is you win the game. The floor is you're drawing, every card in your deck has cantrips.
Yeah, better. Playing cards on top of your deck is better than cantrip. It's really.
I mean, it makes your whole deck cantrip.
Yeah.
It's not.
Yeah, no, this card is ridiculous in goblins. It might even just spawn an archetype where just you play Conspicuous Snoop with Boggart Harbinger as a 2-card combo deck. I don't know. I'm not sure that's good enough, but it is a turn 3 win in Modern with 2 cards, no help. So
yep, seems good to me. I don't
seems
know.
decent, right?
Seems powerful.
Seems powerful. Cards are just off the walls in power level. Even in Pioneer, where you don't have Boggart Harbinger. Card's just really good in goblins, and Pioneer has a lot of very powerful goblins. We got War Chief, we got the one that's the 1/2 that has pro blue and attacks and gets really big. You got Lords, we have Goblin Ringleader, we got a lot of goblins. Skirk Prospector,
got Tarfire.
Yep. Wait, that's not in Pioneer. Not in Pioneer.
Oh, sorry.
But yeah, Tarfire in Modern though, definitely Tarfire in Modern. So this is a shot of steroids in the arm for goblins, which was already. At least in Legacy, Modern, I can't. Modern Pioneer, I can't really talk, so but I don't think they're very good in Modern Pioneer. But in Legacy, Goblins was already an archetype. So, this is just wow, all right. Guess that's a thing that we can do. So, I don't know.
I agree wholeheartedly. That was going to be my pick.
Yeah.
If I had to pick a second card, I think that it's probably Terror of the Peaks.
Yeah, card's really good.
It's just a rate monster again. It's 3... a generic red for a 5/4 dragon, flying, spells your opponents cast that target Terror of the Peaks cost an additional 3 life to cast, which is basically the same thing as Thunderbreak Regent, which was whenever it gets targeted, deal 3 to your opponent. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, Terror of the Peaks deals damage equal to that creature's power to any target. So basically your entire deck, every creature you cast after Terror of the Peaks is going to dome your opponent equal to its power, or, kill a creature. You can do any number of things with it. It's very efficient, but it's so powerful. Its rate is so good. But again, similar to Baneslayer Angel, I don't want to pay 5 mana for a 5/4 flyer that doesn't do anything when it comes into play.
Yeah, it's not its time. This is going to be my overrated card because it's so good, but just not good in Standard at all right now. It's so bad. Elspeth Conquers Death, Teferi Time Raveler say hi. So I don't know. It's unfortunate. And they also, those 2 cards that see heavy play circumvent the 3 life very easily. So
yes. It's really bad against Planeswalkers. It's bad against enchantments. It's bad against Elspeth Conquers Death. There's so many cards that just own this thing's world. But I think that I can imagine a world where you untap with Terror of the Peaks and the game ends.
Yeah.
And that's at least good enough. Whereas I think that things like Baneslayer Angel just take too long to end the game. Terror of the Peaks can at least end the game the turn you untap with it.
That is true. If you play any creature after this guy and you just kill something and attack for 5, it's just it's over. It's over.
Hit your opponent for 5, attack for 5. There's a lot of ways you can pretty easily end your opponent after Terror of the Peaks.
I actually am surprised you didn't say Chandra though, because I thought Chandra was really good. Like I think this is gonna be a standard all-star. Like
I was debating between Terror of the Peaks and Chandra.
Yeah.
Those were my two. Like Chandra is also really good. She's 3 generic red for a 5 loyalty planeswalker. She has 2+1s. The first one is discard your hand, then exile the top 3 cards of your library. Until end of turn, you may play those cards. A +1, Chandra deals 2 damage to any target, and then -9, search your graveyard and your library for any number of red instants and or sorcery cards, exile them, and then shuffle your library. You may cast them this turn, add 6 red, which, adding 6 red mana, my only problem with Chandra is that I don't think that shock every turn is that good anymore.
Well,
And
yeah, it's not. But the other plus one.
The other +1's pretty good, but you don't get to keep the cards for more than a turn cycle. So even if it's draw 3, like it's Ancestral Recall temporary, and that's super strong. Like, don't get me wrong. I think that's very powerful. But I don't know, man. It's just 5 mana planeswalkers are a big ask.
No, they are. They are. I think it's more like the fact that they're both +1s, I think, is what really pushes this. Because this is what I was going to say, the best card for Standard. Like, I was saying Snoop is just like the best card overall, and Chandra was like the best card in Standard. Just like, what puts this over there, like the fact that it starts at 5 loyalty, which is a lot of loyalty, and if and both of those are +1s, like this is kind of like it's like much less egregious than Oko, but it's a similar thing to what Oko had, where like its abilities are really powerful and they're both pluses, so it just becomes really hard to kill this. And if you ever kill something with a +1 that like shocks, you're just so ahead. You're like, if you kill a Lurrus,
I just have a hard time with 5 mana planeswalkers nowadays.
Yeah.
Like, if you're gonna pay 5 for it. Like Liliana of, is that the 6 mana Liliana?
Liliana Dreadhorde General? Yeah.
Dreadhorde General. Like, she pumps out a 2/2 every turn, and then when your creatures die, she draws cards, and she can minus to do Barter in Blood, kill 2 creatures, basically, and sees no play. Garrick Relentless, or the current Garrick, he's also just making a bunch of 2/2 Death Touchers, and then he eventually wins the game very quickly. But all of these 5 and 6 mana planeswalkers, other than Nissa, because Nissa doubles or triples your mana, all of them see no play. And it's not because they're weak. Like, Sarkhan's not a weak card. There's so many powerful game-ending 5 mana planeswalkers, but it's just hard when you're in a world where 4 mana is the rate to end the game.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're right. It's just not her time. It's not her time. It's just not her time.
It could be very quickly. Like,
it could be.
That rate is really strong. She takes over the game very quickly. So I agree with you. Like, in a different world, I could see her being the strongest card. But right now, I don't think that's that world.
Yeah. Also, I guess she's also a victim of the Elspeth Conquers Death problem. Man, Elspeth Conquers Death is so good. I'm going to say I called that one because people were sleeping on that one. And I'm like, guys, this card's really good.
You're right.
I called that
So, overrated red card.
Yeah, this one wasn't too hard. This one wasn't very hard. It's got to be the Incinerator. So,
Agreed.
Like, it's 6 mana, 6/6 trample, but it costs X less to cast, where X is the amount of non-combat damage dealt to your opponents this turn. And then it has, like, the Satyr Fire Dancer ability, where if you deal non-combat damage to your opponent, it will also deal that much non-combat damage that much non-combat damage to a creature or planeswalker that player controls. So, yeah, like, obviously the upside of this card's like, wow. Like, you go turn 1, suspend a Rift Bolt, turn 2, Bolt, Rift Bolt, and then just play this thing on turn 2, which is just like, wow. All right, that's obviously insane. Like, we got him. But I just don't see how often that's happening, you know? Like, what if you have, like, Lightning Helix or, like, Boros Charm? Or, like, I don't know. It's only good with actual Lava Spike. Like, otherwise, this card I just don't think is at all good enough. So,
yeah,
I
think that in powered formats where you've got Rift Bolt, this card is very powerful.
Yeah.
If you have that exact sequence you said, or at turn 3. Like, I think it's still acceptable. Bolt, Lava Spike, Chandra's Incinerator on turn 3.
Yeah, that's like, you're right. That's acceptable.
Those are all acceptable rates. But if you don't have that combo, having this card stuck in your hand is miserable. It doesn't have haste, so if your opponent just Path to Exiles it, you're in Bummer Town.
Well, you get a basic. It's not the worst, but
you get a basic, but it's not like it got in damage before it got
right. You're right.
So it doesn't, and its ability is not necessarily super relevant in most of those formats because people don't play that many creatures.
Yeah.
So it's really, you just want the body and you want it to be 1 mana. And then in less powerful formats like Standard, then you're really probably paying 4 or 5 mana for the burn spell unless you're getting the damage from a Planeswalker, in which case you're not really cheating on mana. Like, you could have just hardcasted this.
Yeah, I think the one place this might see play is in sideboards of Modern Burn. Because, like, there's some matchups you just slam this guy and they're like, oh, God. Like, what do I do? Like, again, in creature-based decks, this thing is humongous. It kills all their creatures. Like, it's definitely not a main deck card, but in certain sideboard matchups, he's bringing this guy, and your opponent's like, oh my God, how do I ever beat this thing? It's just going to club me, and I'm going to die. So...
And it tramples over protection from red cards, right?
It does, yeah. Yeah, if you block with 4 Firewalker, it still deals 4. So
yeah, so in the mirror, maybe it's pretty good. It's bigger than all the other stuff your opponent's doing.
Oh, yeah.
If they don't have the Incinerator,
Actually,
and then it gets around Forge Tender and Core Firewalker.
It seems excellent in the mirror, actually, the more I think about it. Like, because I have a good friend who plays Burn almost exclusively in Modern. He does very well with it, so maybe I'll talk to him about it. He'll know for sure. So, yeah, card's really good in Modern sideboard, but that's it. No more.
Yeah. Underrated red card.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I mean,
there's
a lot of cards here.
There's a lot of them.
Close.
Honestly, I think the one I was going to go with is like either Gadrak or Subira. They're kind of similar and like they do something that's like pretty niche, but they're quite good in what they do. Like
yeah. So Gadrak is 2 and a red for a 5/4 flying. Dragon, legendary dragon. He can't attack unless you control 4 more artifacts, and at the beginning of your end step, create a treasure token for each non-token creature that died this turn. So he's kind of your affinity finisher, potentially.
Yeah, it also works very well, and like I think it also could work very well in just like control-y decks, like because it still blocks, which is great in controlling decks, and if you like and in controlling decks where you like killing stuff, eventually you'll just make enough treasure where this thing won't be able to attack later in the game. I'm not as convinced like it'll be good, but it has a shot. Like 3-mana 5/4 flyer, also in like Urza decks,
ramping you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think in like Urza decks, like they're already teamer. Like the modern Urza decks are already teamer, so you're already playing red. So this guy is just like could be another thing you play alongside your Urza and your your Uro, and now this guy. So you just generate like stupid amounts of mana with all these treasures and like random artifacts and just. Yeah, so I think this card, it also could be a really good sideboard card, like blocking, just a really good defensive card. So
yeah,
I don't think it's going to be great, but...
The only thing that worries me about it is that I get flashbacks of Vantress Gargoyle a little bit.
I think it's better than Vantress Gargoyle, because Vantress Gargoyle couldn't always block. This can always block. Like, you can never not block with this.
I would say that the marginal upside of making treasure is better than the marginal upside of milling your opponent.
Yeah, I very much agree. I still think that's like the one. Like I agree though, Vantage Gargoyle wasn't very good because it couldn't always block. This card can always block, so that's huge. Yeah,
Subira was the other one you said.
Subira, yeah. So this was a card I was watching. I didn't think it was very good, but then I watched it on Versus Live and like those like small like little mono ready decks, and it was like really good because like the fact that it was able to push through damage like by nature of having haste and also giving all your other like little creatures unblockable, it did something that Anax, which would usually take this kind of 3-drop spot in red, wasn't able to do. And also in the late game when you could just like start drawing extra cards with it. I'm not saying it's better than Anax, but I think it actually kind of gives Anax. Like you have to consider. It's not just like we're playing Anax. Now you have to like consider playing this card. I think in mono.
So she's 2 generic and a red for a 2/3 haste. Another target with 1 generic. Another target creature with power 2 or less can't be blocked this turn. 1 and a red. Tap. Discard your hand until end of turn. Whenever a creature you control with power 2 or less deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. So Subira is kind of this aggressive weenie deck payoff. And she plays, like you said, in a red weenie sort of aggro deck. She's going to let some of your critters get through and then guarantee that you have a good Embercleave, or have a Embercleave target, I should say, that will be getting through. The only problem I see with her is that she kind of encourages red decks to play more of the bad cards.
That's fair.
And not lean into, I think, the only good thing about mono red right now, which is playing Embercleave and killing your opponent on turn 4. So I really don't want to play a card that makes my 1-drops better if it's going to make my Embercleave worse. And Anax is kind of the best card to hold Embercleave.
It is.
Because it is always huge. As long as Embercleave is in play, Anax is going to be huge, and it gives you sweeper protection. Subira makes your curve out stronger if you're not getting disrupted because your opponent can't block your shit. It just always lets you get through. but she's worse if you get swept. She doesn't give you that additional protection, and she's much worse if she's the only card sitting in play.
Yeah, that's kind of why I mentioned both these kind of red 3-drops at the same time, because I don't think either of them on their own kind of like got an underrated spot, but like together one of these might get there. So that's kind of like.
And I don't have anything other than like those two were both on my short list.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's all I got in red. That's all I got. Nothing really in the.
So let's move to green. What do we think's the best card in green?
Like, do we even need to ask here? Like, Scavenging Ooze, hooray! It's back.
Yep.
Oh, I'm happy it's back. Scavenging Ooze is a good Magic card, man. Just play Scavenging Ooze. Play Scavenging Ooze in all your green decks. Like, good old Scavenging Ooze. It's not too good, but it's really good. Hell, it hates on graveyards, which God knows we need right now with Uro running everywhere. Yeah, I'm happy. Welcome back, Scavenging Ooze. Like, I'm assuming most people know what this card does, but if they don't, it's a 2-mana 2/2, 1 in the green, and it has the ability of green mana, exile target card from a graveyard, and if that card was a reach card, put a +1/+1 counter on Scavenging Ooze, and you gain 1 life. Just a good old modal. It gets you your life gain, it gets you your threats, it hates on the graveyard, it gets really big. Good old Scavenging Ooze, man. Happy it's back. I don't really know.
Agreed.
Yeah, not much else to say on it besides that. We've been playing Scavenging Ooze for years now, so people, most people know what it does and how good it is. So, yeah.
So for me, I think Cultivate.
Really? Cultivate.
Just good old-fashioned Cultivate. 2 generic and a green. Search your library for up to 2 basic land cards. Reveal those cards and put one into the battlefield tapped, the other into your hand, then shuffle your library. Good old Kodama's Reach. It is always one of the best ramp cards in every standard it's ever been in. And would you know it, ramp is really good right now.
Yeah.
Green ramp.
It's fun.
So until now we've been playing Growth Spiral, always has proven to be excellent. We're playing Uro, and Cultivate plays excellently with both of those cards because it draws you that extra land you want. It guarantees that your next Growth Spiral or Uro will have a land to put into play. It ramps you basically 2 lands in most cases. It fixes your colors. It just is a great, undisruptible sorcery speed ramp spell. Where a lot of the ramp spells that you were playing in the 3 mana slot were creature based, or 2 or 3 mana spot. Like, I don't think we even had a really good 3 mana ramp spell up until now. It's all been 2 mana creatures.
Uro's the one, man. That's the one. Yeah.
Uro's the one, other than Uro. But it's basically just been Uro. And I think that Cultivate lets you not have to play Migration Path. Like, you don't have to play the 4 mana spell anymore. You can just go straight to Cultivate. And I think that it enables the 3-color ramp strategies a lot better than they've been enabled before. Because it's just 1 green pip, and then it'll get you your 2 other colors.
Yeah, Cultivate's good. Man, I actually spent a lot of time thinking about Cultivate when I was kind of poring over the cards for this. And I was like, Cultivate's good. There's no doubt, Cultivate is good. But is it good enough in 2020 Magic? Because you made a really interesting point where you're like, Cultivate's a really good ramp spell, and ramp is really good. But I'm like, what if those go at odds? What if the ramp spells we have are just better than Cultivate now? We have an explosive vegetation that cycles right now, and it sees exactly 0 play.
And I think the reason it sees exactly 0 play is it costs 4 mana, and the cards you want to cast are 4 mana. 4 mana or 5 mana.
That's a fair point.
So, the thing is, it just comes down a turn earlier than the other incredibly powerful ramp spells, and I think you can just fit it in with the ones that you already want to play, because many of the ones you want to play don't get the land themselves. They rely on you having extra lands. It's entirely possible to play Uro and not be able to get the land value because you just don't have an extra land. You've ramped already. Same thing with Growth Spiral. As someone who's played the 0/5 reach.
Or Boreal Grazer? 0/3.
Boreal
yes,
Grazer.
That's the one.
Yeah, the 0/3 reach. All of those cards demand that the land is already in your hand. They don't ramp you. Same thing actually with Song of Creation. Song of Creation lets you play an additional land, but it doesn't give you the land until you cast a spell, in which case you almost always draw a land. But I think that Cultivate is just really well positioned because it guarantees that your next spell gets paid off. And it also does not let your opponent interact other than when it's on the stack with it. And so I think that subtle difference just allows it to get a lot more mileage. because it's the best ramp spell if you're just going to try and ignore what your opponent's doing and ramp as fast as you can. And that's, I think, what you want your ramp decks to do right now, is ramp as fast as possible.
Man, I miss back when creatures were good at ramping. I miss it a lot.
I think that creatures are, like, Gilded Goose is really good. It might be one of the best one-mana ramp spells ever printed. But I just don't want to tie up my ramp in creatures. I want to...
No, I agree. I'm with you. I'm totally with you. Man, but okay, you know what? You sold me on Cultivate. I think, you know what? You're right. The fact that all of our ramp right now needs to have the lands in hand, this just puts lands in your hand, is really solid. So, you know what?
Yeah, and it at least ramps you by itself anyway. Like, even if you don't get the second land ramped in, it did the job, sets you up with card advantage. It's a divination that's drawing you, that's accelerating you.
Yeah,
good enough for me.
Yeah, no, fair enough. I guess the one thing is that if we're all trying to play stuff, like, if we're trying to cast, like, 4-mana stuff with our ramp spells, then there is a thing to be said that, like, Cultivate costing 3 isn't great because it ramps you from 3 to 5, which is, like, you know, not really speeding it up. But, yeah, Cultivate's good. I don't think there's ever debate that. I think
I think we might be going higher than 5 now, and we'll talk about it when we get to the multicolor.
Oh, true. You know what? You convinced me. Cultivate's good. Yeah, play Cultivate. I'm still sticking with Scavenging Ooze being my best pick, but Cultivate's definitely
sure.
solid.
I think Scavenging Ooze is better than Cultivate, but I'm...
Yeah, no, fair enough. You
took it.
Yeah, fair enough. I got to go first.
So, overrated green cards. I've got a good one.
Right.
Elder Gargaroth.
Yeah.
So it's 3 green for a 6/6 Vigilance, Reach, Trample. Whenever it attacks or blocks, choose one. Get a 3/3 Beast creature token. You gain 3 life or draw a card. So it gives you 2 of Uro's modes every time that one of 2 of Uro's modes every time it attacks. It's got Vigilance, Reach, and Trample, which are really good, but it's got the Baneslayer Angel problem. I don't want to have to untap with this thing, and even if I untap with this thing, I think it might be too late.
Yeah, I loved when this card was spoiled. I was actually, like, laughing when I saw this card spoiled, because they spoiled Baneslayer Angel, like, one day before they spoiled this card, and I'm like, seriously, Wizards?
Yeah, this card owns Baneslayer Angel in all contexts, pretty much, and I still think it's not good enough.
It's like literally, it's like, who are you? I'm you, but better. Like, really? Oh, yeah, but no, it still has the same problem as Baneslayer Angel does, even though I'm not going to say strictly better, because strictly better is, like, a thing you just don't say with, like, comparisons like this, but it's pretty close to be, like, it's pretty close. It's about as close as you can get without actually, like, come on. Like, the fact that it has Vigilance, Reach, and Trample. Like, Vigilance and... Okay, Trample's cool, but, like, the fact that it has Vigilance and Reach, like, means it's better on defense than Baneslayer Angel. And the amount of life it gains is, like, comparable to Baneslayer Angel. Because if you're attacking and blocking with this thing, you're gaining more life than what you would have with Baneslayer Angel. And your opponent cannot... It's about as easy to race this thing as it is to race Baneslayer Angel, as in that it's ridiculously hard. So
it's almost impossible.
I think this card will definitely see play in the same slot as if Baneslayer Angel would see play. But it's kind of a bummer that, like, man, poor White, man. White just keeps getting shafted. Like,
yeah, I just think that this is the card that it reads super well. It's a rate monster. But like I said with Terror of the Peaks, like, that card's really strong. I don't know if it's well positioned right now, but at least with that card, I think if I untap with it, I definitely win. With Elder Gargaroth, it comes down, it might stabilize the board, but I don't know that I'm necessarily going to win. Like, your opponent can just dome you.
Yeah, no, but if I untap with this Elder Gargaroth, I'm feeling pretty good. Like,
I'm feeling pretty good about it, but I want my finisher to wrap the game up very quickly, not prolong it and give me incremental value. I want to just kill them.
It's 6/6 for 5. Like that.
It kills them very fast. It's so good.
6/6 for 5.
Man, I just don't want to. I don't want my opponent to just go terror and then it dies. My 5-mana thing, and I know dies to terror it's an old joke. Like, haha, that doesn't actually mean the card's bad. But I think in the current day and age, where the terrors are so good,
yeah,
and the Wraths are so good, I really don't want something when I can, like, you can just play Uro.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. I'm totally with you that this card this is an excellent choice for overrated, and I definitely am agreeing with you here. But I'm just
all the same things, but better for less mana.
I honestly think that's more of an indictment against Uro than it is an indictment
totally.
against Gargaroth, for what it's worth.
But Gargaroth's never going to exist in a world where Uro doesn't, unless Uro gets banned.
Uro, I can't, I'm not going to say Uro's going to get banned, but
It might.
I want Uro to get banned. I think Uro is a cancer on the format, especially at post rotation. It's going to be a cancer on the format, in my opinion. Like, we'll see what happens. Scavenging Ooze is awesome because it gives us a way to fight against Uro, but I think Uro is going to be a cancer on the format post rotation. It already kind of is. So, man, yeah.
So, did you have a different overrated card?
I actually did.
Underrated?
Which I figured I had two because I figured Elder Gargaroth was kind of a slam dunk. But this was an overrated card when it was first printed, so I'm going to bring it up again. Heroic Intervention, guys. Don't play this card. Do not play.
Put it in your sideboard.
This card. Even there, it's not even that good. Every single time this card is casted, like I have had so many people over like when it was this because this card was printed in Aether Revolt, and I've had so many people like try to cast because I'm a control player. I play control decks very often, and I've had so many people try to cast Heroic Intervention against me, and it is 95% of the time just really bad. Like, the one time where it's okay is, like, when I cast the Wrath, and they're like, ha, gotcha, a Heroic Intervention. You had 2 mana up, and I was able to get it while the turn you were casting the Wrath. And I'm like, good job, you did it. But, like, even in that scenario, it wasn't better than Negate. Like, even in that scenario, the perfect scenario. And, like, the one where you're holding up 2 mana in your proactive deck to blank my removal spell. It's just not good. This card is so overblown, so overrated the first time it's around. And now that it's back, this card was $12 when it was in Aether Revolt.
That's ridiculous.
$12. People were playing this.
I think it's a good card. I think it's very specific where you want it. And it's literally your opponent's going to cast a Wrath and you're going to cast Heroic Intervention and then you kill them when you untap because that was their only way to not die. I think that this card's power is really, really sapped by the presence of Teferi because guess what? When they cast their Wrath, if they have Teferi, you don't get to Heroic Intervention.
Gino, I had people telling me, I'm not even kidding right now. I've had people tell me when Veil of Summer is banned, just play Heroic Intervention.
No.
I just can't.
No.
I can't.
2 mana is worse than 1. Drawing a card is a lot better than not drawing a card.
It's just too much. I can't even justify it with a response. It's too much. I've had people say that, though. I just like this card's so overrated, so overblown. I think this is the perfect overrated card. Like, it is the overrated card.
So, underrated cards.
Yeah, I have one for this, which I don't even know if it's slept on. I think people might just think it's. Or I'll go. You know what? I'll go with the one that I know. I think people are actually sleeping on because like the other one, I'm actually not sure people are sleeping on. Which I think people might think it's just good, but this one I think people are. I think Garruk Unchained is the one that people are actually like sleeping on, which I think is quite.
I think that card's bad.
You do? Okay.
Yep.
Okay, there we go. So I picked the right one for underrated. So Garruk, it does like 2 really good and unique things that it's good when you're behind because it can like make 3/3 beasts. And also in decks, I know why the reason it looks bad is because all the planeswalkers we've been seeing over the last year are just absolutely beyond ridiculous, and this isn't absolutely beyond ridiculous. But it does 2 things really nice where it helps you kind of play around Wraths through the 3/3 beasts, and also when you're behind you can like -1 and make a 3/3 beast, and also 3+3/3 in trample on a plus. It's a really good reach tool. Like some decks can take really good advantage of. So it's like really good in these like green kind of beat down decks, whether it be like counters or just like mono or like or Garruk's Harbinger, which is the other card I was gonna say, but I don't think that card's really underrated. I think people know that card's really good, so I didn't want to say it. But yeah, but I think that being able to, because like. And also on its own, it represents a very fast clock where you can just go -2, make it 3/3, +1, pump the 3/3, and you're immediately getting in there for 6, which is like a lot of damage. And you still have the Garruk sitting around. So I can see where you're coming from with it because I don't think it's that good. It's not amazing, but for an underrated card, I think people are sleeping on it. I think it has a home. I think it honestly has a home in Standard because even against ECD, like it's not even that bad. You can make a beast, you can pump something. It's not too bad.
My concern with Garruk Unleashed is that Vivian exists. The 4-mana Vivian that just came out in Ikoria She lets you play. She's basically personal future sight that lets you play creatures off the top of your deck, and her plus makes it 3/3 beast with either vigilance,
reach,
or trample.
Yeah, I think those.
So she makes a better token while ticking up.
Well, she costs 5. I think that's a pretty big.
She costs 5. Yeah, but I think that she does everything Garrick wants to do, but better, and I just don't want to pay 4 for something that's going to make me 3/3 beasts. Like, I just don't.
I don't agree. Okay, the second point where you don't want to pay 4 for a 3/3 beast, that's fair. I can get behind that. But the first point where you're saying Vivian does everything that Garruk would want to do, I'd have to disagree there. I think Garruk.
Yeah, I think it's a 5 versus 4.
I think 5 versus 4. But also, I think the fact that Garruk can push through damage way harder than Vivian can. Vivian's more like a mid-range, grindy value card, while Garruk's like, I am the card that I play at the top end of my aggressive beatdown green deck to push those last few points of damage through while also kind of hedging against wraths. Do I think the card's amazing? No. Do I think it's underrated? Yes.
Then the problem is the other Vivian, Arcbow Ranger.
Oh, Vivian. Is that card still legal? Oh, I guess that card is still legal.
The 4-mana Vivian that gives something up to 2/1/1 counters and trample, and then she also fetches up creatures as her minus.
Well, -5, but you know.
Yeah, but she can do it almost immediately. It's like one turn later.
Yeah, but you have to sack the. Okay, so like, yeah, that's a good comparison. I think it's a very good comparison. So maybe it's not till post rotation, but I think there's the difference between Vivian is you need creatures in play to make Vivian work. Well, this card doesn't need. Actually,
it just gives you the creatures.
Yeah, it just gives you the creatures. So I think I do think the old Vivian. I think that's a much better comparison though. So I'm actually not sure if it's better than that, but I do think there is merit of this over the other Vivian. So we'll see. We'll see. It's definitely not like incredible. I'm not trying to claim it's incredible. I just think that people
underrated.
I think it's right where it fits.
So for me, I would say Sporeweb Weaver. It's 2 and a green for a 1/4 reach hexproof from blue. When Sporeweb Weaver is dealt damage, you gain 1 life and create a 1/1 green saproling creature token. I think this card just eats aggro alive. Any sort of weenie deck, 1/4 is a really tough stat line to deal with without like 3-for-1ing yourself, because it's gonna gain you a life and make a sapling for every time it's dealt damage. So if all you do is chump block a creature and then it eats a burn spell, you've gotten 2 life and 2 1/1s out of it. It's hexproof from blue, so it eats up your blue flyer decks. It's got reach, so it deals with even some of the more evasive threats. And I think it's just really solid for dealing with exactly that sort of threat.
Yeah, card's great. Honestly, really like it. I think you summed up pretty well. I don't really have anything to add.
So let's just go ahead and do multicolor and colorless at the same time, because I don't think there's very many good multicolor cards. Or we can just say the most powerful colorless card is Ugin the Spirit Dragon. Ugin the Spirit Dragon is ridiculous. It's really strong. It's the end game of all ramp decks, I think, from now on. It's the exclamation point at the end of all of those decks. You need to beat Ugin if you're going to try and ramp, and that's the card. Yeah. That's what you need to beat. That's the top end of the format.
Yeah, Ugin's back, guys. Ugin was really good the first time. It's not going to be any worse now. I guarantee. If anything, it's going to be much better now. Because back then, people were explosive vegetating into Ugin. We have much better options now, and Ugin only gets better.
Yep. Colorless. It doesn't care what your ramp strategy was. He just goes at the end of it.
Yep. Bye-bye.
He doesn't care what your control strategy is.
Bye-bye, opponent's permanence. It was nice knowing you. Yeah,
yep.
Ugin. Also, Ugin plays, I think, even better now than it used to. Because back in the day, you had to actually ramp with, like, I said explosive vegetation, but you did have to ramp with, like, creatures, and I think Frontier Siege was a card people played. But now you just have, like, explosive, like, the better explosive vegetation. You have Uro, you have Nissa. Oh, Nissa with Ugin's going to be so gross. Oh, my God. But you have all these, like, cards that, like, put lands into play, which works so well with Ugin's minus, because it just doesn't sweep them. It leaves them there. So... Oh, Ugin. I don't know how I feel about Ugin being back, but whatever. It's back. Doesn't matter how I feel about it. So
Sure. The only card I want to call out from the rest of it, I mean, Solemn Simulacrum's still amazing.
Yeah, I think it's less amazing, but yeah.
I really like Tormod's Crypt as just yet another zero-cost artifact that I can play with Song of Creation.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Honestly, I guess this isn't really colorless. Like, yeah, we kind of hit all the artifacts besides, like, Tormod's Crypt. Oh, I guess, I don't know. Combat Orrery's cool, but not good.
Yep.
Like, I don't know.
Same.
And then And honestly, like, not that I think, there actually is one multicolored card, though, that I think, or actually, I guess there's 2, but one I want to pick out that I think people are kind of sleeping on, I think it's underrated, is Conclave Mentor. So,
Agreed.
yeah, so
It's
2-mana 2/2, Selesnya 2/2, so green-white. And whenever a +1/+1 counter we put on a creature you control, you put that many +1, and then when it dies, you gain life equal to its power. So Winding Constrictor made its own archetype when it was legal, all throughout its legality at 3 Thunderbolt plus. And I think this card is in a better color combination than Winding Constrictor was. And yeah, and it does like a very similar thing. So I think it's going to be really, really, really good. It might be what pushes green-white into the realm of playability even. So we'll see. We'll see. I like that it kills quickly, though. I really like that it kills quickly. It doesn't give your opponent much breathing room, which is what you need in these kinds of strategies. You need that. So, yeah, I think it's
agreed.
Really...
I think it's the standout of all of the uncommon 2-color cards.
Yeah, versus the most color cards in general. Like, they're all kind of bad besides that. Or I guess Watch of the Spires is good, but whatever. I don't know. Blue-White Flyers has always been whatever. So, whatever.
Yeah, so I think that's it for Core Set 2021. Cool set, pretty balanced when compared to the other recent sets.
Yeah.
And let's just quick shout out to Jumpstart. That's a new set, new way to play Magic that's coming out. It's going to be in Arena. You're basically taking 2 packs and slamming them together. The packs are themed, and it just allows you to make a deck out of nowhere.
Yeah, no, it's pretty cool. I was looking at it's a lot of reprints of much needed EDH staples, it looks like, and they're also like making a few new legendaries like that you can play in Historic and also Legacy, which is kind of cool. So I'm looking forward to it. It looks kind of sweet. Like honestly, every time I look at the new Jumpstart cards, I'm like, is this card good enough for Legacy? And then I'm like, probably not. So except there's that one goblin, the 6-drop goblin, like the 6-drop goblin that like flips the top cards of your deck. And then you just get to put all the goblins in play that cost 5 or less, which is like all goblins because there's no 7-drop goblin besides like this guy. So honestly, I'm like, you could just put this play on turn 2 with a goblin lackey. So that seems okay. Seems all right. Just win on turn 3 because you just put 20 power in the play on turn 2. So I don't know. Goblins. We just talked about what's the other one? This Conspicuous Snoop, and now they get this ridiculous 6-drop. So goblins, man. No one cares about Legacy, but I care.
Yep. So yeah, Jumpstart looks interesting. We'll see what it does. It's got cool lands in it.
Yeah.
But I think that's it for Listen to the Magic this time.
Yeah, I think so. I guess like last comment, I'm going to stake my good name here. I don't think we're getting any bans in this set. I think everything's okay. Hopefully, I don't think there's going to be any card that gets banned. And it's what a breath of fresh air to say something like that. I don't think I've been able to say like something like that since like Allegiance, Ravnica Allegiance.
Yeah, I think Ravnica Allegiance, but because even then we thought Wilderness Wreck was going to get banned.
Oh, not even. Okay, Gil's Ravnica, 1 back. Take it 1 back. All right.
Yeah, and even then I thought that maybe Arclight Phoenix would, and it didn't.
Yeah.
But it turns out if you just kept creeping the power, Arclight Phoenix isn't good anymore.
Yeah, I think Arclight Phoenix was just like a victim of. I think looting was the real. I think Arclight Phoenix is just a cool card. I don't think it's too good. Just like
yeah, that's true.
Looting made it too good, and looting was the real problem, and they killed looting, and then Arclight Phoenix died with it. So
Yeah, and I think there were a couple of cards here that if they did not soft ban Luris, would have been a gigantic problem.
Yeah.
Like I think that. I can't imagine how the hell they thought it was going to be acceptable for Selfless Savior and for Archfiend's Vessel to be in the same standard as Luris without a ban.
Yeah.
I don't understand how that was going to work.
Yeah.
But that was something they thought was going to be okay, and that would have been ridiculous.
Just completely unbelievable. Like, that's just a complete... I don't know. It's just completely ridiculous.
Maybe they were playing different cards than I was.
I think that's more of an indictment on the Ikoria cards than the core cards, though. I think the core cards are cool. So, but yeah, no, absolutely, like, shame, Wizards, don't do that, bad, like,
yep,
but yeah.
All right, well, that's it for Core Set 2021. Thank you, listeners, for listening. If you want to reach out, you can do so at DeepListensPod on Twitter, deeplistens.libsyn.com. We've got our comment sections, and deeplistenspodcast@gmail.com. You can also support the show, patreon.com/deeplistens. Thank you, Kyle.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Always fun.
Excellent. All right, till next time. Peace.
Break it down.